Grouper, not to be mistaken for group love, groupies, or the physical concept of a group, is the famed ambient project of Liz Harris, specialising in an extensive but impressively moving catalogue of cold and deeply stirring soundscapes. Ambient music has always been a difficult matter to judge for me. I've done it many times at this point, but each time it proves to be a new experience, simply because every artist who goes for it has a different idea of what they want to do in a field so abstract and free form. It's easy to listen to an album full of drawn out, droning, and usually quite sparse and minimal soundscapes, then just jot down little timestamps on a sheet of refill pad to refer to, but it's not always about simply observing what's there. The best ambient music, or at least best to your ears, is the kind that can provoke a specific feeling or reaction in you, and may even continue to take that somewhere. There are many ways to do this, but I think it's underestimated just how impressive the task is of achieving that by the layering of abstract sound, and timing and timbre are a gigantic factor too. I think I started to truly gain clarity on the effectiveness of such music when I heard the self-titled album by A Winged Victory for the Sullen. It was released in 2011, so it's not the blueprint for all ambient music by any means, but it was an album that helped me to understand ambient further beyond it just being pleasant background music. Winged Victory's opening track, beautifully titled by the way, functions mainly on the harmonious notes of a string orchestra that continuously fade in and out. In fact, for a large portion of the track it disappears for a while. It brings you into the world of the piece you're listening to by simply just having enough sound there to intrigue you, but not too much to blow all its fire away too early. You're drawn in and you're hoping to hear more. Those piano chords, much like the title tell you, are a rejoicing moment. I'm sure any piano player could tell you that they sound pleasant, because that's just how the phrasing and the progression works. It just sounds naturally good to us. But the technical theory behind the music isn't so much a big part of what I got out of it, more than it was the delivery of the chords, because the track is so sparse and with little going on in the first place. So wherever that piano chord progression goes, you follow with it. And there's no specific rhythm or tempo on this track, at the very least not enough for the song to feel rigid or stable. The piano player leads the song forward at their own pace, playing the chords however it comes naturally to them. The music is led purely by feeling. I could list for ages regarding a compositionally dense sonic piece everything that goes on during it. It'd take a while for me to truly pinpoint every sound and when they come, but I could eventually get there. But to me that doesn't really achieve very much. It is nice to be able to know and reference my glockenspiels and the dulcimers, but at the end of the day it matters more how that sound sounds, as well as how it fits into the piece, how it will eventually serve to strike a chord in me personally. Pun intended, fool. Ambient music is, by concept, a free-form canvas of which the artist can paint over, and how much of the canvas they choose to cover in the first place, perhaps leaving some spots blank, is up to how they feel the music should take them. And I genuinely think the best ambient projects have been a result of being purely led by feeling. So here we have Grouper, or Liz Harris as I mentioned earlier. Her music has dabbled in the spacier, haunting, ambient takes on folk music, but some have been flat-out drone projects. I recommend her stuff, it's really good. This isn't a Grouper album though, it's a different but similarly styled side project called Nivhek. Personnel such as Michael Morley from the Dead Sea, Gabby Strong, and Christopher Reed Martin join in for the second track, but it seems to be mostly Harris's vision leading the project forth. The first thing about the Nivhek album you might notice is its use of field recordings, interspersed recordings of a certain area or location to add a very specific and evocative atmosphere to the piece. This isn't new for Harris at all, she uses that to her advantage a lot. The B-side of After Its Own Death begins with a faint rustling you might associate with a rainy day, perhaps one with a light wind. It's a truly immersive atmosphere, and in the middle of the track, maybe 9 minutes and 20 seconds in, you hear the sounds of what seems like the floor of a concrete building being stamped upon, with the door creaking, even a cough echoing through the place, signaling that you're not alone. Hearing Harris's voice mesmerizingly sing a slow melody that eventually harmonizes with itself more the longer it goes on is only a reassuring moment to hear, especially after the grumbling and disruptive analog synths that take the track by storm on the side A. The album is constantly giving you omens that you are not alone. Even in a setting that seems so desolate and breathless, and although that could come off as unsettling and foreboding, I don't think it is. I find it rather grounding instead. The album is so sprawling and drawn out. It isn't at all claustrophobic, with every next sound only arriving when it feels like it. There might even be a long pause before the next section of the track. So in a way, it's also liberating. But then the chimes come in. This isn't the first time you hear these chimes. They introduced themselves during the first section of the track and then dipped, but when they returned later, these chimes ring in and continue to ring for the rest of side B of After Its Own Death, marking the transition into walking in a spiral towards the house. This transition doesn't happen immediately, in fact it arrives around 6 minutes before the end of After Its Own Death, but the album doesn't let go of that chiming motif even after the track is finished. In fact, it holds onto it for the rest of the entire album. 21 more minutes of the chimes echoing. This is where the album gets slightly difficult to immerse myself within, and it's a tad frustrating too, because I don't think Harris is doing anything compositionally wrong here. It's not a new thing to hold on to an idea, keep repeating it for a long period of time, but the concept of such a varied first half of the album suddenly settling into a very predictable second half, and I mean very predictable, is what leaves me a little uneasy. There are a bunch of interpretations you could pull from this choice, but there does become a point in this vast period of time where I am simply just waiting for it to either find something new to move on to, or finish. But it stays frozen, almost as if to say, that's it. The end already did come a while ago, and this abyss is all we have left to be stuck with. The rest is just completely unwritten. Aside from that having been prophesized by Natasha Bedingfield a decade and a half ago, the chimes do start getting manic and then speed up towards the very end, but before it culminates in anything substantial, or completely different, it fizzles out again. So the Nivhek album isn't underwhelming or even flawed, it certainly leaves me with a lot to think about, but it's where Harris lets her feeling drive her with composition that leaves me not confused but disconnected. There's a chance that I might listen to this again and suddenly feel in sync with how long the ending lasts for, but there are also times where I can just step back and acknowledge when I'm not feeling a project as closely as I would hope. So yes, maybe it's a 5 out of 10 for me, but I wouldn't let that deter you from listening to what Harris has to offer, because there's always a chance that you might be captured by the feeling instead.